So, we've got Brenden from Mastertalks. Hello, how are you?
Hey, very good, Callum. How about yourself?
Good, not bad. What time is it where you are?
It's 11:44 a.m., so almost
Oh,
lunchtime.
almost lunchtime. It's almost dinner time here. Whatever we class the evening meal as here, which I'm in northern England, so it's tea. We call it tea up here. So it's almost tea time. We're here to talk about today public speaking. And I know that briefly about yourself, you are a founder of your company called Mastertalks. So just, yeah, give us a little bit of information about a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in university, Callum, I used to do these things called case competitions. So think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age were playing cricket or rugby or footy. I wasn't really into that kind of stuff. So what I did instead is I used that competitive spirit and I applied it to presentations. So for 3 years, I presented hundreds of times and coached dozens of people. So when I started the corporate world, I just asked myself a simple question: how do I make a difference in the world? And I just realized a lot of the YouTube content on public speaking communication is really bad. You hear advice like, oh, get up on stage, or here, speak like this, and it's just really bad advice.
Yeah.
So I started making YouTube videos in my basement, and then one thing led to another, and Master Talk grew from there.
So how many subscribers have you got on that now? Has that grown quite big?
Yeah, I mean, it's gained some traction, and we hit 5,000 today, which is great.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so yeah,
That was
we're just
today's
today,
milestone.
actually. Yeah, literally before I got into before I got into this call, we hit 5, which is great.
So what was it that inspired you to do that to begin with?
Yeah, of course. So when I was in uni and I was doing these case competition business weird presentations, it's a lot like a cult. Like in the same way, let's say you're on a footy team, you're in a footy club, you're
Yeah.
working, you're having fun with everyone. It's like you go every week, you're always watching the same team. It's the same thing, but in presentations. So it's a very small group of people, as you can
Yeah.
probably tell, that versus like a sport or something. But we were extremely passionate about presentations. So rather than talking about sports, we would talk about, hey, did you see the University of Essex do this, or the University of this present in this way? They suck, or these people are great. And I was the speech coach for the entire program. Because in the
Wow.
first year, I was practicing, I was getting good. But then the second year of the program, I started becoming more of a mentor because I had already competed a lot, right? So I wanted to
Yeah.
pass the torch on to the next generation of students. So I just realized I had a gift for communication. So I started to coach people on how to speak. And I wasn't particularly good at it. Like, how do you communicate what you know in a way that somebody else doesn't? And I'm sure you had the
Yeah.
same issues when you started coaching people on
Absolutely.
fitness. Of course, much like yourself, over time, I started to gain a knack for it. And I was like, oh, actually, there's a process here. Here's how you do it. And then I became, I ended up coaching some of the best speakers in the world, essentially, because these people would go on to these international business competitions and win a lot of these medals. So without me even realizing it, Callum, I wasn't really doing it to like be a YouTuber. In fact, being a YouTuber is the last thing on my mind. I want to be a
Mm.
company executive, nothing more. So after I graduated from university, I just said, wait a second. I'm the youngest professional speech coach in the world, and I didn't even realize it. So yeah, I started.
Wow.
That's what led to Master Talk. Essentially, I got obsessed with public speaking, and then I realized later, especially if you're listening to this right now and saying, "Well, I don't want to be on a stage." Well, we have to all realize that public speaking is not just about presentations. It's actually a very small part of that. It's your life. It's every interaction that you have. It's the way that you talk to your personal trainer. It's the way that you order your food at a restaurant. It's every interaction.
When I first became a personal trainer, I didn't really know. You go to PT school, should we say, and you learn how to train people to train effectively, safely. You learn a little bit about nutrition, exercise. But one thing that you don't learn is how can I actually communicate with people? And a lot of people in my industry will fail because they like fitness, so they want to follow a career in it, but they quickly realize, actually, I have no idea how to talk to people. I tend to find that with myself, it just kind of come naturally to me. I mean, I like talking. That's why I'm hosting a podcast. But I first started. I know we're not talking to hundreds of thousands of people. We're only talking 20 to 50, but I've delivered presentations, and the very first one I was a bit like, whoa, I don't know if I can do this. But for me, there's like a switch. I will be nervous right up until that point, and then the minute that the presentation starts or the seminar, a light bulb goes, or like a switch goes in my head, and suddenly I have the room in the palm of my hands, and I am the authority in that position, and it gives, there's some form of confidence. I almost become someone I don't recognize, and then the minute that the presentation's over, I'm like, whoa, what just happened? Coming from someone that has had experience with speaking in public and delivering presentations, seminars on something that I'm passionate about, slides and stuff, do you think that it can come naturally to you? Do you think there is certain people can do it, certain people can't, or do you think that everyone can do it, and it just requires the right kind of coaching?
I definitely think everyone can do it at different levels, Callum. In the same way that you believe that anyone who goes through your coaching can achieve health results. I mean, it's obvious to the both of us, right? Because you're like, well, if you just eat this and you do this exercise, it's not that hard, right? So same thing with me. But I'll give you more layer to that. When I was 5 years old, I grew up in a city called Montreal in Canada, and it's one of the few cities in the world where most people in that city speak at least two languages, French being one of them. So when my parents looked at me and they said, "Hey, buddy, you don't know how to speak French. We need to send you to a French education system." I said, "What?" So for the first 15 years of my life, not only was I scared of presentations like most people, I had to present in a language I didn't even know. So when I was in grade 1 or grade 2, I'd look at the crowd and go, "Bonjour." And that was my life. I hated communication and public speaking. So somebody like me, by the way, I'm very grateful that I know French today. But the point I'm driving is because of that experience, if I could do it, why can't you?
Yeah.
It's just the levels are going to be different, but you can definitely get better than where you are today. In the same way that if you work on your fitness game, sure, you might not be drafted into the NBA tomorrow, but you'll have a great life, absolutely, and you'll feel better.
I think a lot of people forget that Canada is bilingual. That there's French speaking as well, and I think it's very. So it must have been difficult not only to as you say, deliver public speaking, you know, in your first language, but then to have to learn a second one and do it again. Yeah, I think I would be nervous at that point. What sort of experiences, has it always been plain sailing for you? Have you ever had situations where you've been speaking, maybe publicly, online, or in person, where it's not been the best experience, and you thought, "Oh yeah, that didn't go that well"?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Bunch of times still happens today, to be honest. But I'll give you one in particular. I was probably for year one into my speaking career, and I was given a speaking engagement to go give a workshop to a group of teenage girls between the ages of 9 and 16, 8 a.m. on a Saturday. Let's just say they didn't want to hear the old guy talk about communication. I had a lot of trouble getting their attention, getting them to engage with me, but so it was a big L for me. But the idea was, how do I learn from this experience? How can I do better next time? So I brainstormed with a couple of friends, and then we figured out a solution. I went back the next year and I did well. And what was the difference? The difference was I brought a bouquet of roses. So you're probably wondering, why does that matter?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I just brought a huge bouquet of roses. I put on the table, started speaking. And then towards the middle of the presentation, when I got to mastering your audience, I said, "Who saw the roses?" All the girls raised their hand. Then I go, "Keep your hand up if you wondered why the roses were there. All the hands stay up." And then I went, "Exactly. Remember that if you treat your presentations like a bouquet of roses, you'll always be successful. And appeal to the needs of your audience, because what little girl doesn't like a rose?" And that's the point. That I learned from that experience, and I tried to find creative ways to get their attention. And you go from there, but it was definitely a crap the first time I presented it. So yeah.
For me, for some people, it's like that generic. Imagine that everyone else is in the room is naked and you're not. To take that sort of anxiety away. I
Yeah.
don't really know what mine is. As I say, I think for me, as I mentioned, there's just a switch that seems to go. I tend to, once I talk about something that I am passionate about, I think at that point, any any anxiety is gone. And how long realistically can you expect someone to really develop that skill to be a good public speaker. You know, obviously, if people are going through your service and you're coaching them, how long do you really tend to find that it takes people to really master that craft?
It really depends how committed you are, Callum. That's the way I think about it, in the sense of, if you have a very clear goal as to why you want to master communication, your ramp up is much shorter. So I'll give you an example with me. When I was in university, the only reason I got really good really quickly wasn't because I was special. It's because I needed to win competitions, right? In the same way, when you're very competitive, you're like, well, I need to fix my filler words. I need to fix my but I need to be really good in January, and it's August. So I got 4 months to make that work. So it was a very fast. That's true with CEOs, entrepreneurs, nonprofit founders, leaders of movements. For them, communication is not only essential, it's do or die. You either master communication, you raise the money, you get the vision straight, you align your message, or you fail, right? But for somebody who has a day job, let's say 9 to 5, yeah, sure, communication is still essential, but it won't be your number one priority in life because you can still get away without having it. So it really depends what your public speaking why is, as I like to call it. And the stronger that why is, the more powerful your communication skills become. So you're a good example of this as well. You need to ramp up your communication skills if you want to build 7 figure fitness practice, right? Because you need to attract people towards you. You need to get people to pick you as their trainer and versus everyone else. And what's the difference? The difference is communication, in my opinion. Everyone's going to have the same meal plans, everyone's going to have the same fitness training, but it's the relationship that we have with you and your ability to communicate to us, to someone who knows nothing about fitness like me, to go, wow, this Callum guy's special. He's different. And that's the key.
Yeah, it's funny that because after I posted the first episode of this podcast, I had a couple of messages from people that not necessarily even my, um, I mean, they're my followers, but you know, I've never worked with them before. They've never even crossed into that boundary of potential client. But it was nice of them to take the time to message me and go, "Wow, you know, I just listened to your podcast, the whole thing, and yeah, you know, you really know your stuff." And I'm like, well, it's the same stuff that I've always spoke about, or like you say, another trainer has spoke about on any YouTube video in the world. You know, there is all the information's there that anyone can get. So I think you're right. I think it's about who you can connect with, like who begins talking and you instantly go, yeah. You know, same for me. I have mentors that you know I look up to for information, and everyone out there at the moment in my industry, I see it all the time, obviously because of analytics, I get that many messages per day off, you know, fitness pro mentors, right? These people who promise to turn my business into 7 figures, and then you have a quick research into their own business and they haven't even turned their own into 7 figures. And I get that all the time. But there are a few. So there's loads of these. There's loads of mentors, people who coach coaches, and they all say very similar things. Again, it's not rocket science. No one's reinventing the wheel. It's the same as you said before. Everyone's got the same sort of meal plans and same ideologies. But there are a few that I follow. And there are even a few that I have purchased a program and I've gone, yeah, you know, because I'm not necessarily invested in what they've got to say because I don't even know what the course is yet, you know, and it's probably no different to the couple of courses I've done. But there's something about that person, and it probably is that communication where I'm like, I don't care what you're selling me, I'm sold. And this most recent one was a guy, he's a fitness professional, he's called Jamie Alderton, very successful, and I followed him for quite some time. But he did like a free challenge. Now, in this free challenge, he did all of his communication through Facebook Lives within the group, right? And there was like a couple of thousand people in there. And it got to the end, and he did a video to obviously upsell into his program. This was the first time in my career where I didn't even stay till the end of the video. I'm like, yeah, sold. Take my money. And that, I think that had a lot to do with the delivery. It wasn't necessarily the content of what he was teaching me, although he does that is, you know, he does do that very well. It was just his communication with me, his confidence that he had, his creativity in his delivery as well. I was like, yeah, I don't even know if I can afford this, but I can't afford not to. You know, get what I mean?
I love that. Yeah.
So I think you're right about that. I think it's all about the communication from my own experience as a a business person, but also as a consumer as well. I see what you say on both situations. So let's talk a little bit about fitness, okay? Because obviously, what is your fitness regime? I know you aren't, like you said before, like it's something you don't know a great deal about, but I'm assuming that you do have a bit of a regime with someone like yourself that has all this, it spends a lot of time obviously in computer work and a lot of time traveling and stuff. Surely there's some sort of fitness regime in there to keep you going at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to keep things simple. I think if anything I've learned in my life when it comes to health, not an expert like you, but the way I think about it is everyone's got their own opinions on everything. Some people even disagree on fruit, like it's ridiculous. so, so we're like, oh no, you shouldn't eat oranges. Like, what do you mean I shouldn't eat oranges? So the way that I think about it is I just take what everyone agrees on. So I intermittent fast every day. I never eat breakfast, right? So I probably
So,
eat 8 hours within the day.
yeah, same.
That's one. The second thing for lunch, I always have whatever my mom cooks me, which is usually healthy. It's always rice with some sort of curry. And then after that, I do batch eating. So in the sense of right after that meal, I start stuffing a bunch of nuts, right? Like pecans are good for you, walnuts, pistachios. Stay away from peanuts and stuff. But like those three are good.
I stay
Uh,
away from peanuts because I'll die if I have them because I'm
oh, there you
allergic.
go. Right.
So
Yeah.
all the good things you just listed, I can't have.
Right, but like Stephen Gundry's got a cool yes no list that you can just look up in a PDF. It's great. But anyways, and then after that, I to avoid food combining, I wait 3 hours. Then I stuff a bunch of fruit in my face, and then after that, I have dinner, and that's it. That's my meal plan essentially, and I just repeat, rinse, and repeat. So that when I want to splurge, I can splurge, and I'll be good. And then other than that, I work out every 2 days. Most of my workouts are really just me dancing alone in my basement, if I'm being honest. But other than that, it's the usual crunches, lunges, squats, horse stances. I did martial arts for 5 years, so I do a lot of that. I'm a brown belt in Kempo, but it's been a long time though. But yeah,
Yeah,
there you
I
go.
did.
That's
I did taekwondo when I was probably about 8. I did really well actually. I got my belt and I was on my way. I can't remember what was after white at the time in taekwondo. I'm sure someone listening can let me know. But um, yeah, that was a long time ago. But I'm nearly 30, so I can barely remember. But I do remember thinking, getting into it, thinking, yeah, I'm quite. I think the sensei, whoever was coaching me, would give me compliments, or he'd pretend to be hurt when he probably wasn't to feed my ego a little bit. And I'd go home to my mum like, yeah, let me show you what I learned. I tested it out on a friend once. I cannot remember what I did, but I ended up flipping him over and he landed straight on his back. I didn't mean to, but I was like, look what I've learned. And I was like, if I'd have stuck with that, I probably could have probably be fitter than I am now, in fairness. Um, but yeah, no, general fitness like that. It sounds to me like your fitness is very functional fitness, which is all you really need anyway. You don't need any exotic exercise schedule unless you're training. And I think people get confused with that. They'll look up programs. They think they need to train in the gym 5 times a week and do these certain things. And realistically, train what you need to train for. If you're just trying to get genuinely fit, then you just need to do the stuff you mentioned before, your squats, your general what we call functional exercise, stuff that's going to help benefit you in your day-to-day life. Intermittent fasting is a funny one. I don't get many people that do it. I do it myself. Um, I pick sort of 8 to 9 hours a day, and I tend to skip breakfast. I tend to use caffeine to do that because I find that if I just have coffee and water. Yeah, I kind of had a feeling just based on what you do. I'm thinking, yeah, this guy definitely needs his caffeine to keep him functioning.
Yeah, I use tea instead of coffee. But yeah, I think what I found with intermittent fasting, it's something I did my whole life, and I never really understood the health benefits behind it until recently. It just makes my life easier. 2 meals instead of three, less to think about. I do have breakfast from time, like big breakfasts from time to time, but I treat that more like dessert not like healthy. So let's say every month or every 2 weeks, I would go out for brunch and just stuff my face with French toast. But other than that, it wouldn't work.
I love French toast. So moving on to, I said this on a couple of other podcasts. I don't like ignoring the elephant in the room, which is the pandemic. Um, I don't know how bad that sort of hit over there in Canada, but obviously here it's quite bad. And I know further down south in the States to you is pretty bad. Um, how has it affected you though professionally? Has what sort of barriers has that done anything to you, or have you just kind of coasted along? In some cases, I have personally found in some cases I've rode the wave and actually come out of it in a better position, but you know, not everyone has been. So, how has that affected you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the first time COVID hit wasn't too fun. I had a bunch of speaking engagements. I was going to go to Amsterdam and Jordan and all these amazing countries. I've never really traveled before, so it's going to be like my first year on the circuit. And then I woke up to a 75% loss in revenue. Everything went to zero, and I just went, okay. So did I cry for a couple of days? Absolutely. I was like, my life is over. But then after I realized what most people don't is that, by the way, 2020 is not canceled. You can't actually go to a bank and ask for it back. That's not how life works. Can you just add a year to my lifespan? Can you just do that? Yeah, that doesn't happen. So instead, what I did is I reinvested that time because I know I just don't get it back. And I brainstormed with my friends and obviously had the ideas to guest on podcasts, something I never did before because I'm always on flights all the time, or writing my content on YouTube 3 years in advance, which is I'm about to finish that as well. Or things like just change my speaking business to a coaching one. I usually don't take clients because it's a lot of investment, because I'm more of a thought leader than a coach,
Yeah,
creating content for people to learn from. But, I pivoted a bit, and there was a lot of interest. And now I do better revenue wise than I used to. So yeah, it's all about understanding how you can pivot, and more importantly, having the right people around you to help you pivot, right? Because if you're just alone in your business, you're trying to figure something out, or really in your life, not even business, just how you're dealing with these emotions. Life is always more fun in groups than alone.
yeah, and a lot of world leading, entrepreneurs and speakers will all have the same ideology around that, which is you're only as successful as the people that you spend your time with. And it's kind of like you people will bring you down. You have to really analyze your social circle. People say it in different ways, but they all mean the same. They're all referring to the same thing. Gary Vee will, um, you know, everyone will say different things, but it all leads to the same principle, which is analyze your circle as well, and who's going to be successful with you. I mean, I have two businesses, so my online business I am on my own, but I do have the support of my wife. I do have the support of some of my loyal clients. I have a couple of people who work for me on my programs, so they're really good. And my other business is my gym, which I'm in here now. And despite what the pandemic has done to that, we have a good group. I have a business partner, and I have again the members. So I class myself as quite fortunate. But I can imagine there's a lot of people that are doing in business on their own. And yeah, if it's a dark place to be, if you let your mind go into it. It's interesting what you said about pivoting though, because I think that's what happened to me. I kind of nothing changed. There was no drastic needle mover, so to speak. But I think I just rode the wave. I think obviously the whole world had to go online, and here I am already prepared with an online service. And whilst half of you know, not even half, 80% of personal trainers had never been online or even ventured into it, they were forced to go online. And now it's a bit different because sadly for me, everyone's fed up with online. They want to get back to the gym. So now it's flipped on the other side. Now it's hard to work online or because of what it is. So I've had to pivot. And one thing that I've started doing as well is I got good at my own marketing, and I started using that and going, well, people always need leads into their business. People always need marketing. That's not going to change. So I kind of ventured into that a little bit and took on an extra sort of work model basically. So I guess that's the same thing. I just went, well, yeah, it's how I'm going to pivot here. I either just accept that this virus is just, going to destroy my business, or I'm going to ride it and adapt. And I think that's where a lot of people are failing. I think they can't adapt. Either they don't want to, or they don't know how, and they're not prepared to learn. I know you would have followed some work of Bob Proctor, I imagine, and one thing that Bob Proctor will call it is ignorance, but not in the way that we know ignorant as in being rude, but ignorance is in fact we just don't know, and we choose not to know. We choose not to learn. So yeah, I tend to find that word pivot is a really good example. And I hope that you managed to pivot the way round. Obviously, you would have had a lot of dates cancelled, and you've immediately adapted quickly to the coaching. So, talk a little bit about the coaching, because I'm going to plug some links into the details of the episode. So, where can people find you, and what sort of, if I was someone now looking to develop my public speaking skills, where would I start? If I was to come and look for you now, what would you suggest would be like the videos to watch or the actions to take?
Of course. For me, Callum, my goal with Mastertalks is to help the world. So I don't really have time to coach everybody. So my number one piece of advice is to go watch my free videos, right? Which is Master Talk on YouTube. I post a lot of great stuff on how to speak in a second language, how to present to an audience you've never met before, and different topics that you might be curious about. And then from that knowledge that I use on my executives, the next step for you is to join a Toastmasters club. Toastmasters is very inexpensive. It's a great way for you to get started, build a fun community to learn public speaking. And then the third step, if you start to realize, from that experience, this is something you really enjoy, and then you want to be a master communicator, you want to be the best person at work, you want to be the best person in your life, and from a communication perspective, then I would encourage you to get coaching, whether it's me or anyone else. Like, then you get the tools to circumvent that success. It's like the difference between, doing exercise on your own versus doing it with a trainer. Yeah, you could totally do it on your own. It's just when you have a trainer, it's a lot faster because you don't really exercise anymore for the sake of exercise. You do it, oh, well, Callum woke up this morning. I don't want to let him down. I have to wake up at 5 a.m., which works on me a lot. That's why I have a lot of coaches in my life. But yeah, that would be my three-pronged approach here. So the first part, watch my free stuff, watch the free YouTube videos. I have a bunch of great information on communication, and feel free to send me a message. I'm always happy to answer any video ideas. Join a Toastmasters club. And then the third one, if you want better service, if you want faster results, then get a coach.
The other thing I was going to ask you is, obviously we mentioned before in my own circumstances about people having to go online right now. So a lot of my audience is going to be in the UK, and here in the UK, rules are a little bit stricter than a lot of the rest of the Western world. And we're currently now in England, well, all the nations of the UK are divided for whatever reason, but in England now we've just come out of a second lockdown, and inevitably we'll go into a third one, and this is going to be something until this vaccine is ready and rolled out. So a lot of people are still kind of having dates booked for whether it's seminars, public speaking, or even I had musician Lucy Spraggan on an episode last week, and she's got tour dates booked, and she doesn't even know if they're going to happen or not, and that's a big area of her revenue. So a lot of people are having to go online. So do you think there's similarities between talking to people in person where you can see them and having to? I know a lot of people might think, well, surely it's easy to talk online where you can't see these people unless it's like a big Zoom conference call. Surely it's easier not to speak to hundreds or even thousands of people in a room than it is online. The reason I asked that, Brenden, is because I can. Last summer, I know it wasn't public speaking, though I have done that, but I delivered a big warm up in the summer of last year for like 300 people who were doing a race, okay, a big charity race, and it was
Cool.
busy, the busiest day in my town, and everyone's out and about, and of course I was nervous, but again I did it, and like I said to you before, I just took control. My business partner was by my side, so I had someone there, and I did it, and I did that with no problems whatsoever. However, I struggle going live on Facebook to talk to an audience that I can't see. Do you find that happens quite often, that even though you're not talking to people in person, people get a little bit scared of online because it's a big scary world, and it's not the same when you can actually see people.
I absolutely agree. You know, everyone's different, Callum, but I would say the vast majority of people struggle a lot more in the online world than the in-person one. And I'll explain why. It's very simple. Gauging the audience's reaction. If you're in person, you know, in the UK, given a cool warm up, what's great about that is you can feed off the energy of everyone, right? So let's say at the end of the workout, you're not really sure if you did a good job. All it takes is for one of those 200 people to come up to you and say, "Hey, Callum, I love the exercises you did. I'm going to start doing this in my life. You're the best, man. Take care." You're like, wow, okay, maybe I do know something about, right? So, same thing with presentations. If I say a joke, you're going to do two things if I was in person. One, you're either going to laugh at the joke and go, "Oh man, Brett is such a funny guy," or more likely, number two, you're going to look at me and go, "This guy's not funny. Why is he saying jokes?" But either way, I can adapt my routine, I can adapt the way I present. You can't do that online. And the reason you can't do that online is because you can't gauge your audience's reaction. Even this one on one discussion that we have right now, I have no clue how you're reacting to me because I'm not looking at you, Callum. I'm looking at the
Screen.
lens,
Yeah.
right? That's the thing, man. So when you're on a Zoom call with 70 people, 20 people, 30 people, and most of their cameras are off, the same joke that I said before in person, you need to say with the same amount of energy and enthusiasm and assume it's funny. And that's the challenge. So, how do we overcome this? A couple of easy things. First one, you always want to keep your eyes on the camera, like I'm doing in this conversation right now. So, an easy way to do this is just put a picture, right, of somebody that you love or like a favorite food next to the lens. So, you're always looking at the lens. That's tip one. Tip two, is always assume the perfect audience. Always assume good intention from your audience. What happens when you start to speak more often and you start to engage with the people who are watching you, you start to realize that your ideas really matter and you'll start to automatically assume that your audiences are really cool. So when I started podcast guesting, episode 1 or episode 2, it's really weird because a stranger who's essentially stalked you for a week is asking you questions about your life and you're just there like, okay, this is bizarre. But then over time, when you have informal ones after the show or before the show, you start to realize that everyone you're doing shows with is really nice. So even if I don't know you, it transitions very quickly from who's this Callum guy?
Yeah.
What's he training people on to wow, look at the way that he's adding value to his community of clients. He doesn't need to do that. So it's great that he's adding this as a benefit to help people in his community who can't afford his coaching. And I think that's really great. Right. So the assumption I have in these types of conversations now, I speak to you as if I've known you for 5 years. Right. That's the approach I usually take. And that's something you don't get overnight, right? You learn over time. And then the third thing I would say is have dinner with your audience. What do I mean by this? Very few people, whether you're a business owner, an employee, someone who has a great idea, has one-on-one conversation with the people who are actually listening to their ideas. You know, when I started Master Talk, I thought it was a stupid idea. I had like 17 subscribers. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew who those 17 people were. And it was by engaging them that 17 grew to 170, and you know, the rest was history. Same thing with our businesses, same thing with our messages, and the same thing applies to online presentations. Even if you don't see anybody, as long as you know one person in that audience and you've talked to them, that should give you the energy to show up powerfully.
Yeah, I tend to find that with like social media numbers. So many people become obsessed with like getting loads of numbers. And it's like, it's better to know 40 of your followers and know them well than, have 5,000 followers that may never. And I was guilty of this myself. I cared so much about that number going up because in my mind, I'm like, I need to have a big following. For someone to trust investing in me, particularly if it's like one of my higher end programs, I need them to see that, you know, that it's social currency. Look how many followers I've got. Look, really, it's self gratification. It's for me, it's just to show some form of success. And eventually, when it got to sort of maybe this last year, maybe the pandemic helped, I completely changed that mindset. And now I tend to find that my followers go up more than they did at first because I'm not constantly worrying about a number anymore. Now I'm engaging to the people that are actually there to begin with. And I tend to find that as a result, they tend to share the content. They tend to then talk about me, and then the followers tend to come organically. And I think that is what you said before about business. It doesn't really matter of speaking to as many people as possible. It's knowing your audience and know who you're speaking to and delivering high quality content for free, very valuable content to that audience that they'll go and they'll talk about you instead, and then your organic following will grow. So it sounds to me like that's exactly what happened to you when you had those 12 followers. Where a lot of people would probably give up at that point, but I've only got 12. I've not long started this podcast, and I've only the first week I only had sort of 10 downloads, which quickly doubled up to sort of 30 within a couple of days, and it's going a bit more plus subscribers, and it's like I haven't necessarily pushed much marketing into it. I haven't necessarily tried, I could pump a lot into it and market it, but I've not had to, because my primary concern on this podcast is just talking about stuff and just giving value. You said before, value for everyone. So yeah, there's people that might not necessarily, particularly in this climate, be able to afford to work with me. But that doesn't mean I'm not still going to try and, what you said before, help the world. I feel like if I just sat back and did nothing, I'd be lying to myself and my cause. So for me, it's like, okay, well, what's another way that I can deliver quality content and talk about the same stuff that I would do to my paying clients in a platform that everyone can get in the car, listen to the podcast, or go for a run, or even go to bed. A lot of people listen to podcasts. If people are going to bed and listening to this show, but not necessarily buying anything from me, that makes me happy, because that means I'm reaching to someone, as opposed to, oh, I've got to get 100 1,000 downloads by the end of it. What's the point? As long as the people who are actually subscribing and listening are getting the value, it will grow organically.
I'm with you. That's the right mentality to have, man. I always say to people, if you want 1,000 followers, have 1,000 conversations. And if you're not willing to have those 1,000 conversations, don't bother.
Yeah, I think Gary V was saying a lot. I watched a video on him saying this, which is like, if you want followers, and I think he almost mocked the the stereotypical way people will buy followers, or people will just follow for follow. And what he was saying is, no, go and actually engage with and he made a task. Is like, do 100 people a month, engage with 100 people a month, leave a meaningful comment, and your followers will grow slowly, but they'll grow naturally. And then it's better to have a gain of 100 followers in a quarter, 3 months, that are actually people who want to follow you, rather than trying to take shortcuts and get 500 followers that are probably going to unfollow you anyway, because they're not genuinely people who are interested in what you have to offer.
Absolutely. The way that I see it, something easy people can do on Instagram. If somebody sends you a DM, are you replying through text or are you sending a voice note? Every single DM I get to this day, even with 5K, I still send a voice note. Gary, with millions of followers, still meets people one on one, still signs books. Why? He has a net worth of $300 million.
Yeah.
Why is he doing that? Because you're always a slave to your audience. Because without your audience, you are nothing. In this game, anyways. So you need to always be asking them. You need to always be engaged with them so that you can make the best content in the industry for them.
Yeah, I always run a survey like every quarter. Or when it comes to times like this where I'm not particularly running any programs because Christmas is on the way, and I want to spend time with my family and concentrate on Christmas, and I tend to use this time of year to do my research. It's like, okay, what do my audience want? What do they want to know? What are they struggling with? And then I'll run a survey for free. I don't hard sell on that. I don't try and send them links straight away and go, right, well, here's the program for you. I don't do that. For me, it's like, what because for me, it's about what content do I need to create to the people that are watching. So it is like what Gary says and what you're saying, and I like that idea of you are a slave to your audience. And it's like, if your audience if there's no connection there whatsoever, you'll lose the audience because the audience you've acquired wasn't a real audience to begin with. You've literally just tried to grow and grow without actually giving value, you know. And I think you can't build no like and trust if people can't trust someone who completely. If I've got an audience of people who are bodybuilders, and I'm giving out information on female fat loss around the menopause, what value am I giving to my audience? So I think that's a similar thing. I think for me, yeah, I'd rather just focus on that. Now, communication skills. What advice would you give to someone who is a bit like myself, scared to go live on Facebook? I even did a live video, Brenden, where I had to turn the camera around to and I think I had like a whiteboard behind me, and I was creating some content, but I had to turn my camera around. Now I can have this conversation with you now, and it's not a problem. I'm quite confident in myself, and I can do a Zoom with like 50 people, and I still am not bothered. I've already told you before about in person there's no stage fright for me, but for some reason going live on Facebook, where I don't know, I'm not in control of that situation. I don't know who's going to comment. I don't know if there's going to be any troll slip through. Am I going to slip up? Am I going to make myself look daft? It's something that I have been struggling with, and I'm getting a bit better at it now. I'm pushing my boundaries a little bit. But there was one time a couple of months ago where I was a slave to this fear, and I just turned the camera around. So I was still doing the live, but I couldn't see who was liking, commenting. I was just literally looking at it. The delivery went better because of that reason, but then of course there's the other thing, like what people commenting, what people liking, should I carry on, have I lost connection, so what advice would you give to people? Because I know I won't be alone there, and there'll be a lot of people that tend to get so nervous to hit that live button, and half of the people, they know that people are going to get notified because it pops up on everyone's timeline. Callum Sully Fitness has gone live. What advice would you give in terms of communication and combating that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually very simple, man. The way that I think about it is, how do you still engage them and keep the conversation going when there's no conversation? Right? So in a live, what happens is you press record and you have to just keep going. Right? Because now it's live. Like you can't really edit anything out. It's just how it's going. So one thing Pat Flynn does very well is you have a separate screen with all of the comments that are coming through, and you just engage them. So if you don't know what to say next, you can easily say, "Hey guys, it's Callum. Oh, look who just joined us. Oh, Jennifer's here. Jennifer's saying hi. Hey, Jennifer." And then you just keep going like that. And then that buys you time. Another thing you could do, there's a great cheat code you can use, live stream. Have a sticky note with bullets, because there's different types of live streams. There's the Q&A live stream, where you're answering questions. Here, this is what Jennifer's saying right now. Oh, that's a great question. Let me just answer that. Or it's a content live stream where you're presenting content to an audience, or you're doing both. You're presenting content, you're taking questions. Regardless of the format, you can always have a little sticky in a way that you can't in a presentation that you're giving for people, in a way that you're in a live stage, let's say. So that would be my advice. But the third thing is, the more you engage people and you see them responding to what you're saying, oh yeah, hey, thanks, Callum. Really, it gives you that mental energy to go, like, oh, they're actually listening to me. Oh, there's an audience here. Let me keep going. So that would be my advice for live.
Yeah, I like that. That's great. So, Brenden, just to sort of close off, what lessons have you learnt along the way during your career? What were the ups and downs, and what advice would you give based around that?
Yeah, for sure. So I can leave you off with a book recommendation and some life advice. So book recommendation, number one public speaking book I always like to give out as a recommend is Thirst by Scott Harrison. I think Scott's a savant in what he's doing with communication. I think people should really be following him and checking out his book.
Yeah.
And for life advice, the only advice that really matters at the end of the day is the following, especially if you're still listening to us for some reason. It's be insane or be the same. If you want to be like everyone else, that's totally fine. But let's summarize where that gets you. Overweight, broken relationship, 9-to-5 job you don't really like. You get my point. The only way to do great things in life is to be insane. Don't you find it odd that a 22-year-old started a YouTube channel, not on vlogging, not on pranks, but on executive communication coaching? And then the year after, he started coaching C-level executives or CEOs of companies who are double his age, 23, but also still lives in his parents' basement, doesn't own a car, dances alone in that basement an hour a day, karaoke's in 8 different languages, and doesn't plan on moving out for a long time. And by the way, loves Justin Bieber. How do any of these decisions make any sense at all, Callum? You're a grown man, Brendan. You should be getting a girlfriend and moving out. And that's my point. When all of the decisions that you make in your life make sense to the only person that matters, which is you, you'll always be successful. So be insane or be the same.
I love that. Be insane or be the same. I follow something very similar, a similar mantra. I suppose it's just the same in different words, but it's get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it's the same situation in a sense of the comfort zone is a bad place to be in. And that's not just in fitness, that's also in life. That's in your marriages, that's in everything. Comfortability, you can never be staying the same. You're always going one way or the other. Every action has a reaction and all that. So when people think, I'm fine now, I want to get to here and this is where I'm comfortable. Well, no, you're never just staying as you are. It either means you're going forward or you're going back. And most of the time, if you're comfortable, you're actually going backwards in the sense that you're settling for where you are now and you're not accepting, there's no growth, there's no increase. And I think people's fear of that's number one. I think number two is people's fear of people's opinions. I want to be insane, but I'm worried about that deviating from the social norm, and that's going to stop me. And I think that does break down barriers a little bit. And I think using that term, be insane or be the same. People want to be the same. They spend the whole time like just I follow a style, and no, like be unique, do something for yourself. I think that's why I see a lot of people personally fail. Say in my industry, the success rate in the UK for personal trainers in their first year of qualifying is somewhat daft, like 17%. 17% of personal trainers make it past their first year. And the reason for that is because of what you just said. They only do it because they want to teach what people think they want to teach. They're not prepared to break that comfort zone and go and create something different, go and create something unique. I know some successful personal trainers that have combined gaming with fitness, right? And I can't remember what the company's called now, but it is something like Game Fitness or something. And I have to remember, but yeah, basically what they did was they created something different. Their passion for gaming, which I love gaming myself. I don't know if there's no PS5 under my Christmas tree, I'm going to have to go out and buy one anyway. So that's happening. But then, combined with fitness, and I'm not really sure how they deliver that service, but I'm pretty sure it's the whole brand, the whole company is based around fitness programs for gamers. So I think again that's someone being unique. That's someone doing something what people consider insane, but actually they just don't want to be the same. They don't want to deliver the same generic weight loss program or I tend to find that my own programs are similar. I took something, an idea. Part of the reason my business has been successful over the last couple of years is because 3 years ago I decided to create something different. I basically thought, let's throw everybody into a Facebook group and I will deliver a series of content and I will deliver a series of videos and let's just see what happens. And it ended up being my best-selling program. It's worked with hundreds of people. But if I'd have just followed the generic formula of, I'm a bit scared to do that because, no one else is doing it. It probably won't work. What will people think? A lot of people are worried about what their competition thinks, which is another thing. People, what will this other personal trainer think if I do this? So what? They're not doing it. What does it matter? So, yeah, I that's what I take from that, Brenden. Anyway, it's probably completely different to what you delivered, but that's exactly what I took from it. And no, it's been great. what sort of what last sort of things would you do? Obviously, I'm going to plug in. Where can people find you? Or is it on Instagram, on Facebook? Do you have a website?
Yeah, YouTube's the best way, Callum. So you can just go on YouTube, type Master Talk in one word, and you'll find me right there.
Perfect. And there's loads of videos for people to delve into if they want to hear more.
Absolutely. There's like 90 videos or something up there. So there's a lot of things to do during the holidays, I guess. That's something you want to do.
I know I've kind of just got into YouTube at the minute because everyone's guilty of this, where it's the thing that if I go to bed at night and I haven't necessarily got to go up in the morning, I'm on, and then obviously the algorithms tick that I've got another video that's like recommended for you, and 2 hours have gone by, and I'm like, watching YouTube. So that's my night planned in tonight. I'll definitely go and check out some of your videos, and I suggest that my listeners do the same. Go and check it out. It's free value. I've only been talking to you for an hour, and I've already took a tremendous amount of value from it. So thanks, Brenden, for coming on and sharing all that with us. And you'll probably hear from me soon, to be fair, so I can tweak on that communication. Okay?
Sounds good, Callum. Thanks for this conversation. It was a great time.
No problem. All right, thank you very much, Brenden, and all the best. Take care.
You too, man. Yeah, don't be shy to shoot me an email if you need anything, all right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, take it easy, brother.